Researcher Quindall stood in the airlock of the UES Thunder, trying to calm his racing thoughts. Behind him, two other Zephyrian scientists, Velthar and Zenai, checked their portable scanning equipment one final time. The devices were smaller, versions of the massive arrays on their mothership, but still far more advanced than anything the humans possessed. Captain Lisa Blake waited for them on the other side of the airlock door. Through the small window, Quindall could see her friendly smile and relaxed posture. She had no idea that her ship had just destroyed scanning equipment that had taken the Zephyrian civilization 3 centuries to perfect. "Ready?" Dr. Rodriguez asked from beside him. She had insisted on accompanying them as a translator and guide, though Quindall suspected she was also curious about what had frightened them so badly. The airlock cycled, and they stepped into the Thunder. Quindall's first impression was how cramped everything felt. The corridors were narrow, the ceilings low, and every surface seemed to serve multiple purposes. It looked exactly like what he would expect from a species that had to fit everything into a very small space. "Welcome aboard the Thunder," Captain Blake said warmly. "I understand you're interested in seeing how we design our ships." "Yes," Quindall replied through his translator. "We are very curious about human engineering methods." Blake began walking down the main corridor, pointing out different sections as they passed. "This deck contains our primary crew quarters, the main mess hall, recreation areas, and some of our equipment storage." Quindall activated his portable scanner and immediately felt his confidence wavering. The device showed the same impossible readings as the mothership's equipment. According to his instruments, they were walking through a corridor that was occupying the same physical space as several other rooms. "How many crew quarters are on this deck?" Velthar asked. 80 individual rooms plus shared facilities," Blake replied. "Each crew member gets their own private space, small but comfortable." Quindall did quick mental calculations. 80 rooms, plus common areas, plus the corridor they were walking through, all supposedly fitted into a deck that his scanners measured as being only 30 meters wide and 100 meters long. The math simply did not work. "Could we see one of the crew quarters?" Zenai requested. "Of course." Blake led them to a nearby door and pressed a button. The door slid open to reveal a small but complete living space with a bed, desk, storage lockers, and even a tiny private bathroom. Quindall stepped inside and activated his scanner again. The readings made no sense at all. The room appeared to be 3 meters wide and 4 meters long, but his instruments insisted they were still standing in the main corridor. According to the scanner, the room they were in did not exist. "Is something wrong with your equipment?" Blake asked, noticing his confused expression. "Perhaps some interference from your ship's systems," Quindall said carefully. He did not want to alarm the humans until he understood what was happening. They continued the tour, visiting the mess hall, the recreation areas, and the equipment storage rooms. At each location, Quindall's scanners showed the same impossible results. Spaces that clearly existed and functioned normally simply did not register as being there. The mess hall was particularly disturbing. It was large enough to seat the entire crew for meals, with a full kitchen, serving areas, and even room for social activities. Blake explained that it was one of the most important spaces on the ship, where the crew gathered to maintain morale. During long missions, Quindall's scanner showed empty space. According to his instruments, they were standing in a corridor, not a dining hall filled with tables and chairs. "Captain Blake," Velthar said slowly, "how do you fit so many facilities on such a small ship?" Blake laughed. "Good design and efficient use of space. Our naval architects are very skilled at making every square meter count. Would you like to see the engine room next?" The engine room was even worse. It was a vast space filled with massive machinery, multiple levels of catwalks, and enough equipment to power a small city. Chief Engineer Tony Martinez met them at the entrance, pride evident in his voice as he explained the Thunder's propulsion systems. "She's got 3 fusion reactors, 4 plasma drives, and backup chemical rockets for emergencies," Martinez said. "Plus all the power distribution systems, fuel storage, and maintenance equipment. Quindal stared at the enormous machinery around them, while his scanner insisted he was standing in an empty corridor. The fusion reactors alone should have taken up most of the ship's interior volume, but somehow they were crammed into the same space as crew quarters, the mess hall, and dozens of other facilities. "Mr. Martinez," Zenai said carefully, "how much fuel does your ship carry?" 6 months' worth for normal operations, 12 months if we're careful," Martinez replied. "The fuel tanks take up most of the lower decks." "Lower decks?" "Decks 7 through 12. Below the crew areas." Quindal felt a chill run through his body. His scanner showed only 6 decks total. Yet Martinez was casually talking about 12 decks, and they had only visited the upper levels so far. "Could we see these lower decks?" Velthar asked. "Sure thing. Watch your step, though. The fuel levels can be a bit overwhelming if you're not used to them." They took an elevator down to Deck 7. When the doors opened, Quindal saw massive fuel tanks stretching away in all directions. The space was enormous, like standing inside a vast underground cavern. Catwalks and service platforms provided access to monitoring equipment and maintenance points. According to his scanner, they were still on Deck 3. "How much fuel is stored here?" Quindal asked weakly. "This is just one of the storage areas," Martinez said. "We've got similar tanks on Decks 8, 9, and 10. Deck 11 has the fuel processing equipment, and Deck 12 has the emergency reserves." They spent an hour touring the lower levels. Each deck was massive, filled with equipment and storage that should have required an entire ship to contain. Quindal's scanner continued to insist that none of it existed. By the time they returned to the upper decks, all 3 Zephyrian scientists were in a state of quiet panic. They had seen impossible things with their own eyes, walked through spaces that their most advanced technology said were not there, and met humans who treated it all as perfectly normal. "Thank you for the tour," Quindal said to Captain Blake as they prepared to return to their shuttle. "Your ship is very impressive." "Glad you enjoyed it," Blake replied. "The Thunder isn't the biggest ship in our fleet, but she's efficient. We've got carriers that are 10 times larger and can hold thousands of crew members plus fighter squadrons." Quindal did not want to think about what their scanners would show when pointed at a ship 10 times larger than the Thunder. If the Thunder was impossible, those carriers would be beyond comprehension. As their shuttle returned to the mothership, the 3 scientists sat in stunned silence. Finally, Velthar spoke up. "Did we just hallucinate that entire experience?" "Our scanners recorded everything," Zenai replied. "The readings are still showing the same impossibilities." Quindal checked his own instruments. The data was clear and consistent. They had spent hours inside spaces that did not exist, talking to humans who lived and worked in rooms that occupied the same physical location as other rooms. "There are only 3 possible explanations," he said finally. "Either our technology is completely wrong about how space and matter work, or the humans have developed technology so advanced that they can manipulate reality itself, or we are all suffering from the same delusion." "What do we tell the Council?" Velthar asked. Quindal looked out the shuttle window at the Thunder floating peacefully in space. It looked so normal, so harmless. Just a small military vessel with a crew of 300 humans who had no idea they were casually violating the fundamental laws of physics. "We tell them the truth," he said. "Humans are either gods who don't know they're gods, or we are about to discover that everything we thought we knew about the universe is wrong." The shuttle docked with the mothership, and the 3 scientists hurried to compile their report. Behind them, the Thunder continued its patrol, its crew completely unaware that they had just terrified the most scientifically advanced species in the galaxy. In the Thunder's mess hall, Sergeant Amy Phillips finished her dinner and complained to her friends about how cramped the ship felt. She had no idea that the room she was sitting in should not have been able to exist, and that her casual acceptance of impossibility was about to change the balance of power in the galaxy. Chief Mechanic Ryan Bell wiped his hands on a clean rag and smiled at the three alien visitors standing in the Thunder's main engine room. Their translator devices made strange clicking sounds as they tried to process his words, and their large, compound eyes seemed to take in every detail of the massive machinery around them. "Pretty impressive, isn't she?" Bell said, patting the side of the nearest fusion reactor. "This baby can run for 20 years without major maintenance. Of course, we swap out components regularly to keep her running smooth." The lead alien, who had introduced himself as researcher Quindal, held some kind of scanning device that kept making worried beeping sounds. "Mr. Bell, how many reactors does your ship carry?" "3 main units plus 2 backup generators," Bell replied. "Redundancy is key in space. You never know when something might go wrong, so we always have backup systems for the backup systems." He led them deeper into the engine room, past banks of control panels and monitoring equipment. The space was enormous, with multiple levels connected by stairs and catwalks. Bell had worked in this room for 5 years and still discovered new corners and equipment bays he had never noticed before. "The fusion reactors are just the start," he explained as they walked. "We've got the plasma drive systems over there. The power distribution network runs through those conduits, and the fuel processing equipment is down on Deck 9. One of the other aliens, a smaller one called Velthar, stopped walking and stared at a massive piece of machinery. "What is this device?" "That's one of the plasma conduits," Bell said. "It channels energy from the reactors to the drive systems. We've got 12 of them running through the ship, each one big enough to walk through if you needed to do maintenance inside." Velthar's scanning device was making increasingly frantic sounds. The alien looked confused and maybe a little frightened. "These conduits run through your entire ship?" "Yep, from the reactor level all the way up to Deck 2. They branch off to power different systems along the way. Pretty elegant design, really." Bell continued the tour, showing them the fuel storage tanks, the waste heat management systems, and the emergency power units. The aliens followed along, but they seemed more and more disturbed as the tour went on. Their scanning devices never stopped making worried noises. "Is something wrong with your equipment?" Bell asked. "If our systems are causing interference, I can shut down some of the non-essential units." "No, please do not alter anything," Quindal said quickly. "We are simply having difficulty understanding your ship's design." Bell shrugged. "What's confusing about it? Standard military engineering, everything built to last with plenty of redundancy and safety systems." Mr. Bell, the third alien, Zen-Nai, spoke up. "How large would you estimate this engine room to be?" Bell looked around thoughtfully. "Hard to say exactly. Maybe 80 meters long, 40 meters wide, spans about 4 deck levels." "Why?" The aliens looked at each other with what Bell was starting to recognize as their version of worried expressions. Their translator devices chattered for a moment before Quindal spoke again. "Our measurements suggest your entire ship is only 100 meters in length." "That's about right," Bell confirmed. "She's a compact design, very efficient use of space." "But if this engine room is 80 meters long and your ship is 100 meters long, where do you fit everything else?" Bell laughed. "Oh, the engine room doesn't take up the whole length of the ship. It's just one section. We've got the crew quarters forward of here, the weapons systems, the command center, storage areas, the mess hall, recreation spaces, medical bay, all the usual stuff. All in the remaining 20 meters? "Well, it's not just about length," Bell explained. "We use the full width and height of the ship. Multiple decks, you know. The Thunder's got 12 decks total, so there's plenty of room for everything." The aliens were quiet for a long moment. Bell could hear their scanning devices making increasingly urgent sounds. Finally, Velthar spoke up. "Could you show us how the different areas of your ship connect to each other?" "Sure thing. Want to see the schematic?" Bell led them to a wall, display, and called up the Thunder's technical diagrams. The screen showed a detailed cross-section of the ship with all 12 decks clearly labeled. Each section was color-coded to show different functions: crew areas in blue, Engine systems in red, weapons in yellow, storage in green. See, it's all about efficient design, Bell said, pointing at the screen. Deck 1 and 2 are command and weapons. Decks 3 through 6 are crew quarters and common areas. Decks 7 through 10 are fuel storage. Deck 11 is fuel processing, and Deck 12 is emergency systems. The aliens stared at the display in what Bell could only describe as horror. Their scanning devices were now making sounds like smoke alarms. "Mr. Bell," Quindal said slowly, "are you certain these diagrams are accurate?" "Of course. I helped design some of these systems myself. Been working on this class of ship for 8 years. And you are certain that all of these decks and systems exist within your vessel?" Bell looked at him strangely. "Well, yeah. I mean, we're standing in the engine room right now. You can see it exists. Want me to take you to some of the other decks?" "Yes," Zen'Nai said immediately. "We would very much like to see the other decks." Bell shrugged and led them to the nearest elevator. As they rode up to Deck 6, he chatted about the ship's history and his role in maintaining her systems. The aliens remained silent, clutching their scanning devices and exchanging worried looks. Deck 6 was crew quarters, a maze of narrow corridors lined with individual rooms. Bell knocked on one of the doors and it opened to reveal Petty Officer Karen White, one of the supply specialists. "Hey, Ryan," she said cheerfully. "What brings you up to the residential levels?" "Giving our alien friends a tour," Bell replied. "Karen, could you show them one of the crew quarters?" "Sure thing." White opened her door wider and gestured them inside. "It's not much, but it's home." The room was small but complete, with a bed, desk, storage lockers, and a tiny bathroom. White had personalized it with photos of her family and a small collection of books. "How many people live on this deck?" Velthar asked. "About 60, White replied. "Each person gets their own room, plus we have common areas for socializing. There's a small library, some game rooms, exercise equipment, makes the long missions more bearable." "And this is just one of the residential decks?" "One of 4 decks. 3 through 6 all have crew quarters. Different layouts depending on rank and job specialty, but everyone gets privacy." Bell could see the aliens were becoming more agitated. Their scanning devices were making sounds like dying animals. After leaving White's quarters, they visited the mess hall on Deck 5. It was dinner time, and the large room was filled with crew members eating and talking. The noise level was comfortable, the kind of friendly chatter that made a ship feel like home instead of just a workplace. "How many people can eat here at once?" Quindal asked. "The whole crew if we need to," replied Cook First Class Dave Johnson from behind the serving counter. 300 seats plus standing room for emergencies. We serve 3 meals a day plus snacks and drinks whenever people need them." "And you have enough food storage for extended missions?" Johnson laughed. "Oh yeah, we're loaded down with supplies. Got enough food for 6 months easy, plus emergency rations for another 6 months after that. The storage areas on decks 8 and 9 are packed full." The aliens looked like they were about to faint. Their scanning devices had given up making warning sounds and were now just displaying flashing red lights. "Is there a problem?" Bell asked. "You guys look a little green." "Well, greener than usual. We are simply trying to understand how you fit so much into such a small space," Quindal said weakly. Bell looked around the mess hall, taking in the dozens of tables, the serving area, the recreational space where some crew members were playing cards. It seemed normal to him, maybe even a little cramped compared to the newer ships. "Honestly, I think this ship is pretty tight on space," he said. "The new Titan-class destroyers are much roomier. Bigger crew quarters, larger common areas, better workshops. This old girl is efficient, but she's not luxurious." The 3 aliens looked at each other with expressions that Bell was beginning to recognize as pure terror. The idea that humans considered the Thunder cramped seemed to disturb them even more than everything else they had seen. "Mr. Bell," Zen'Nai said carefully, "you mentioned workshops. Could we see those as well?" "Sure, they're down on Deck 10. We've got machine shops, electronics repair, even a small fabrication unit for making replacement parts. They took the elevator down to the workshop levels. The doors opened to reveal a bustling industrial area where several crew members were working on various projects. Sparks flew from welding stations, and the air hummed with the sound of precision equipment. Chief Petty Officer Mike Torres looked up from a lathe where he was machining a replacement valve. "Hey, Ryan, bringing VIPs. Down to see how the real work gets done?" "Something like that," Bell replied. "Mike, can you show our guests around the shops?" Torres wiped his hands and gave them a quick tour of the facilities. The machine shop had equipment for working metal, plastic, and ceramic components. The electronics lab had stations for repairing everything from simple circuits to complex computer systems. The fabrication unit could create almost any part they might need during a long Missio High analyst. Kathamara stood before the emergency assembly of the Zephyrian Council, her forearms trembling as she held the data tablets containing the impossible scan results. The council chamber, carved from a single massive crystal deep within their homeworld, had never witnessed such a gathering. Representatives from every major scientific institution, military command, and government body had come to hear her report. "Honored council members," she began, her translated voice echoing in the vast chamber, "what I am about to tell you challenges everything we know about the physical laws that govern our universe." Council Speaker Morthane gestured for her to continue. His ancient form, nearly 200 years old by human standards, had witnessed the rise of Zephyrian civilization, from primitive tool users to masters of quantum science. Nothing in that long experience had prepared him for what he was about to hear. Kathamara activated the main display, showing the wireframe scans of human vessels. "These are the results of our scanning attempts on human warships. As you can see, our most advanced equipment, which can map the quantum structure of matter across galactic distances, cannot properly analyze the interior of these vessels." War strategist Hexgoth leaned forward. "Are you suggesting their hull materials are somehow blocking our scans?" "No, honored strategist. Our scans penetrate their hulls without difficulty. The problem is what we find inside." Kathamara changed the display to show the internal scan data. "According to our instruments, these ships contain more interior space than their external dimensions should allow." A murmur of confusion ran through the assembly. Scientific advisor Plexerin spoke up. "That is clearly impossible. Perhaps there is a calibration error in the scanning equipment." "That was our initial assumption," Kathamara replied. "We recalibrated our systems 3 times, used backup equipment, and even sent a team aboard one of their vessels to verify the readings with direct observation." She paused, letting the weight of her next words settle. "The direct observation confirmed our scan results. These human ships violate the basic principles of spatial geometry." The council chamber erupted in shocked chatter. Council Speaker Morthane called for order, his authority barely maintaining calm among the assembled scientists and officials. "Explain exactly what you observed," Morthane commanded. Kathamara brought up a detailed schematic of the human destroyer. "Thunder. This vessel measures 100 meters in length, 30 meters in width, and 20 meters in height. Simple mathematics tells us this provides approximately 60,000 cubic meters of internal volume." She highlighted different sections of the ship as she spoke. "However, our direct observation documented crew quarters for 300 individuals, a dining facility capable of seating the entire crew, workshops and storage areas spanning multiple decks, massive engine systems, fuel storage for extended missions, and weapon systems," Intelligence Coordinator Zaxlin interrupted. "Perhaps humans simply build more efficiently than we assumed possible." "Honored Coordinator, we calculated the space requirements based on what we observed. The crew quarters alone would require 40,000 cubic meters. The engine systems, another 30,000. The fuel storage, workshops, and other facilities add another 50,000 cubic meters minimum." The numbers hung in the air like an accusation against reality itself. 120,000 cubic meters of interior space contained, within a hull that could hold only 60,000 cubic meters. "You are describing a physical impossibility," stated Chief Physicist Ralvin. "Matter cannot occupy the same space as other matter. Rooms cannot exist in the same location as other rooms." "And yet we observed exactly that," Kethamara replied. "Our team walked through spaces that our instruments insist are occupied by other spaces. We documented facilities that should overlap each other but somehow coexist." She activated a recording of researcher Quindal's voice from the human ship. The council listened in growing horror as he described walking through rooms that did not exist according to their scanners, seeing massive machinery that occupied impossible amounts of space. "War strategist," Hexgoth stood abruptly. "If humans possess technology that manipulates space-time itself, they represent a threat beyond our ability to comprehend or counter." "That is what concerns us most," Kethamara agreed. "If they can casually manipulate spatial dimensions for simple storage and crew areas, what other applications might they have developed?" Scientific advisor Plexerin activated his own data display. "I have been analyzing the implications of what you describe. If humans can compress or fold space-time, their weapons could theoretically bypass any defensive system we might deploy." The display showed theoretical weapon designs based on spatial manipulation technology, projectiles that could appear inside enemy ships without crossing the intervening space, energy beams that could strike from directions that did not exist, defensive systems that could fold attacks into pocket dimensions. "Worse," Plexerin continued, "their ships could potentially carry unlimited supplies, weapons, and crew. A single, human vessel might contain the equivalent of an entire fleet." Council Speaker Morthane called for quiet as the assembly began to panic. "What is our assessment of human intentions? Do they show signs of aggressive expansion?" Intelligence Coordinator Zaxlin consulted her reports. "This is perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the situation. The humans appear completely unaware of their technological superiority. They speak of their ships as if they are normal, even cramped." She played recordings of Chief Mechanic Bell describing the Thunder as having limited space, and comparing it unfavorably to newer human designs. The casual way he discussed impossibilities made the council members physically uncomfortable. "They treat violations of physical law as routine engineering," Zaxlin continued. "Either they are masters of deception, pretending ignorance while possessing godlike technology, or they genuinely do not understand what they have achieved." War strategist Hexgoth began pacing, his movements sharp with anxiety. "Both possibilities are terrifying. If they are deceiving us, they are far more sophisticated than we imagined. If they are genuinely unaware, they might accidentally trigger catastrophic spatial distortions." Chief Physicist Ralvin had been running calculations on his portable computer. "I have been modeling the energy requirements for the spatial manipulation we observed. The power needed would exceed the output of our entire star system. Yet their ships show no unusual energy signatures," Kethmara added. "Their power systems appear to be simple fusion reactors, primitive by our standards. Somehow they are achieving impossible results with technology that should be inadequate." The implications hung over the assembly like a dark cloud. A species that could manipulate space-time with primitive technology was beyond their understanding. If humans could do the impossible without even trying, what might they accomplish if they actually focused their efforts? Scientific advisor Plexerin voiced what everyone was thinking. "We may have encountered a species so far beyond us that we cannot even comprehend the gap. They might be to us what we are to primitive single-celled organisms." "Then what do we do?" asked Council Member Thesara, speaking for the first time. "How do we interact with beings who casually violate the laws of physics?" War strategist Hexgoth stopped pacing and faced the assembly. "We treat them with extreme caution. No hostile actions, no threatening behavior, no attempts to scan their vessels without explicit permission. We cannot risk provoking a species with such capabilities." "I agree," said Council Speaker Morthane, "but we must also warn other species. If humans possess this level of technology, the entire galactic community needs to be informed." Intelligence Coordinator Zaxlin activated the communication systems. "I will send alerts to all known civilizations immediately. Priority 1, human. Vessels are not to be scanned, threatened, or hindered in any way." As the emergency session continued, reports began arriving from other Zephyrian ships that had encountered human vessels. Every single report confirmed the same impossible readings. Human ships of all sizes, from small scouts to massive carriers, showed the same spatial anomalies. Captain Vexa Hall of the exploration vessel Dawn's Edge reported that a human cargo ship he had scanned appeared to contain warehouse facilities larger than his entire vessel. Commander Silktar of the Border Patrol ship Vigilant described a human medical vessel that seemed to have hospital facilities equivalent to a planetary medical center. "The pattern is consistent across their entire fleet," Kethmara summarized. "Every human vessel we have encountered displays these impossible characteristics. This is not experimental technology or specialized equipment. This is their standard construction method." The weight of that realization settled over the Council. Humanity was not just advanced. They were so far beyond current galactic understanding that their basic engineering principles appeared magical. War strategist Hexgoth made the final recommendation that would change the balance of power in the galaxy. "I propose that we classify humanity as a class unknown civilization. Their technology is so far beyond our comprehension that traditional threat assessments are meaningless. We must also recommend that no species attempt military action against humanity," added Psi. Lieutenant Commander Zarlthek had been watching the deep space sensors for 23 years. He knew every sound, every light, and every pattern the machines made. The Zephyrian Empire's monitoring station, Outpost Nexus 7, sat at the edge of known space like a silent guard. Nothing ever happened here. That was the point. The morning shift started like any other. Zarlthek checked the long-range scanners, reviewed the overnight reports, and prepared for another day of watching empty space. His 6 eyes moved across the control panels with practiced ease. The soft blue glow of the displays lit his scaled face as he settled into his chair. Then, the impossible happened. A sharp alarm cut through the quiet station. Red lights flashed across every screen. Zarlthek's head snapped up, his heart's racing. In 23 years, he had never heard this. Alarm! The deep space detection system was screaming about something moving faster than light itself. But that was impossible. Nothing moved faster than the Empire's best ships. The Zephyrian fleet had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years because they had the fastest ships, the strongest weapons, and the smartest minds. Every species in 47 star systems knew this truth. Zarlthek's clawed fingers flew over the controls. He ran the scan again. The result was the same. Something was out there, moving at speeds that broke every law of physics he knew. The computer calculated the object's velocity at 3 times faster than the Empire's fastest warship. "This cannot be right," he whispered to himself. His voice echoed in the empty control room. He ran a 3rd scan, then a 4th. Each time, the readings got worse. The object was not slowing down. If anything, it was getting faster. The sensors showed it moving through space like it was swimming through water instead of fighting against the basic forces of the universe. Zarlthek reached for the emergency communication device. His hands shook as he activated the channel that connected directly to the Empire's capital world. This channel had not been used in over 50 years. Far across the galaxy, aboard a small human ship called the HSS Liberty, Captain Jake Morrison was having the best day of his life. The test flight was going better than anyone had hoped. The new quantum slip drive was working like a dream. "Lisa, how are those engine readings looking?" Jake asked his chief engineer. Lisa Carter smiled from her position at the engineering station. "Everything is perfect, Captain. The drive is running smooth as silk. We're holding steady at maximum speed with no strain on the system." Jake nodded and turned to his navigator. Pete, what's our position? Pete Williams checked his instruments. Right on course, sir. We should reach the test zone in another 6 hours at this speed. The HSS Liberty was not much to look at. Compared to the massive ships that other space-traveling nations built, it was small and simple. The hull was made of basic metal alloys. The life support systems were just good enough to keep 30 people alive and healthy. The weapons were minimal, designed more for clearing space debris than fighting battles. But the Liberty had something no other ship in the galaxy possessed. Hidden in its engine room was humanity's greatest achievement, a drive system that could fold space itself. The humans called it quantum slip technology. It worked by finding tiny cracks in the fabric of space and time, then widening them just enough for a ship to slip through. The idea had come from Dr. Alex Rodriguez, a physicist who spent his whole life studying the strange behavior of particles at the quantum level. Most scientists thought his theories were impossible. The military thought his ideas were useless. But Jake Morrison had believed in him. Now, as the Liberty raced through space at impossible speeds, Jake felt proud of his decision to support the project. The human race had finally achieved faster-than-light travel. They could explore the galaxy, meet other species, and take their place among the stars. What Jake did not know was that humanity had just announced itself to a galaxy full of civilizations that had been watching and waiting for thousands of years. Back at Outpost Nexus 7, Zarlthek received his orders from the Empire's high command. The message was clear and direct. Intercept the unknown vessel immediately. Use any force necessary to capture or destroy it. Admiral Vorketh's face appeared on the main screen. The old warrior's eyes burned with anger and concern. Commander, Zarlthek, you are certain about these readings? Yes, Admiral, I have checked them many times. The object is definitely there, and it is definitely moving at impossible speeds. Then we face a threat to the Empire itself, Vorketh said. If another civilization has developed technology superior to ours, they could challenge our rule over the galaxy. This cannot be allowed. Zarlthek watched as the Admiral's image disappeared from the screen. Within minutes, he could see the signs of the Empire's response. Ships began appearing on his long-range scanners. Not just a few ships, but an entire battle fleet. The Admiral was taking no chances. The dreadnought Eternal Dominion led the fleet. It was a ship designed to destroy planets, not just other vessels. Its weapons could crack a moon in half. Its shields could withstand the explosion of a star. If the unknown ship refused to surrender, the Admiral had the power to erase it from existence. Aboard the Liberty, the human crew continued their peaceful test flight. They had no idea that the most powerful military force in the galaxy was racing to intercept them. They thought they were alone in this part of space, running a simple engine test far from Earth, where any accident would not endanger their home planet. Communications Officer Amy Rodriguez was monitoring the radio frequencies, listening for any signs of other ships in the area. Space was big and empty, but it was always good to be careful. She had been hearing some strange signals for the past hour, but they seemed too organized to be natural phenomena. Captain, I'm picking up some unusual transmissions, Amy reported. The patterns are too regular to be background noise, but I can't make sense of them. Jake walked over to her station. Could be natural radio sources, pulsars, quasars, that sort of thing. Maybe, Amy said, but she did not sound convinced. The signals are getting stronger, though, like they're getting closer. Science Officer Greg Thompson looked up from his instruments. Captain, I'm detecting some gravitational anomalies about 2 light hours ahead of us. Could be a star system we don't know about. Jake nodded. The galaxy was full of surprises. Humanity had only been exploring space for a few decades. There was still so much they did not know. What they were about to learn would change everything. The Zephyrian fleet moved through space like hunters closing in on their prey. Admiral Vorketh stood on the bridge of his flagship studying the tactical displays. The unknown vessel was still maintaining its impossible speed, heading straight for the intercept point. "Admiral, we will be in weapons range in 30 minutes, reported his tactical officer. "Good. Signal all ships to prepare for battle. Whatever that thing is, it will not escape us." The Admiral had fought many battles in his long career. He had conquered worlds and destroyed fleets. But he had never faced an enemy with technology that defied the basic laws of physics. For the first time in decades, he felt a touch of uncertainty. In 30 minutes, two civilizations would meet for the first time. Neither knew what to expect from the other. Neither understood how much this moment would change the galaxy forever. The Fae. Liberty continued on its course, its crew still unaware of the massive fleet approaching them. In the engine room, Lisa Carter watched her instruments with satisfaction. The quantum slip drive was performing beyond their wildest dreams. "We did it," she whispered to herself. "We actually did it." She had no idea how right she was or how much trouble that success was about to bring. The dreadnought Eternal Dominion dropped out of faster-than-light travel with a flash of blue energy that lit up the darkness of space. Admiral Vorketh felt the familiar sensation of his body adjusting to normal space-time as the massive ship's engines powered down from their journey. Around him, dozens of other Zephyrian warships appeared in the same coordinated fashion. The fleet formed a perfect sphere around the predicted intercept point, each ship positioned to cover every possible escape route. It was a formation that had captured or destroyed thousands of enemy vessels over the centuries. "Admiral, target, acquired," announced his sensor officer. "The unknown vessel is exactly where our calculations predicted." Vorketh looked at the main display screen. There it was. A small dot of light moving through space at speeds that still made his mind struggle to accept the readings. As he watched, his ship's powerful scanners began collecting detailed information about the target. What they found made no sense at all. "Sir, the vessel appears to be constructed from primitive materials," the sensor officer reported, confusion clear in his voice. "Basic metal alloys, simple electronics, minimal defensive systems. But the engine signature is completely unknown." Admiral Vorketh studied the scan results with growing bewilderment. The ship looked like something a primitive civilization might build for their first attempts at space travel. The hull was thin and weak. The weapons were almost non-existent. The life support systems were crude and inefficient. Yet this primitive vessel was moving faster than the Empire's most advanced warships. "How many life forms aboard?" the Admiral asked. 30, sir. All appear to be organic beings, similar to the carbon-based species we know from the Outer Rim territories." Vorketh nodded. 30 beings in a small, primitive ship that somehow possessed technology beyond the Empire's understanding. It made no sense, but the facts were clear on his screens. Aboard the HSS Liberty, Captain Jake Morrison was staring at his own screens, with equal confusion. Where moments before there had been empty space, now dozens of massive ships surrounded them in all directions. "Amy, are you getting anything from those ships?" Jake asked his communications officer. Amy Rodriguez's fingers flew over her console as she tried to make sense of the signals flooding their receivers. "They're definitely trying to communicate, Captain. The signals are incredibly complex, using frequencies and modulation patterns we've never seen before. Can you establish any kind of contact?" "I'm trying, sir. The computer is working on pattern recognition, but these signals are unlike anything in our databases." Science Officer Greg Thompson looked up from his station with wide eyes. "Captain, those ships are huge. The largest one is over 5 kilometers long. Their energy signatures are off the charts." Jake felt his stomach tighten. Humanity's first contact with alien intelligence, and they were surrounded by what was obviously a military fleet. This was not how anyone had hoped first contact would happen. "Pete, options for maneuvering?" Jake asked his navigator. Pete Williams shook his head grimly. "They've got us boxed in completely, sir. Even with our speed advantage, There's no clear path out of this formation. Jake took a deep breath. As the captain, the responsibility for humanity's first contact with aliens fell on his shoulders. The decisions he made in the next few minutes could determine the future relationship between humans and whatever civilization operated these ships. Amy, keep working on those communications. I want to talk to whoever is in charge out there. On the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Vorketh was reaching the same conclusion. Direct communication was necessary. He turned to his communications officer, a skilled linguist who had dealt with first contact situations before. Open a channel to the target vessel. Use standard first contact protocols. The Zephyrian First Contact Protocol was simple and direct. It established the Empire's authority, demanded immediate surrender, and promised merciful treatment for those who cooperated quickly. It had worked with every primitive species the Empire had encountered over the centuries. The transmission began with mathematical concepts to establish intelligence, followed by pictographic representations of the Zephyrian Empire's power and reach. Finally, it concluded with a clear demand: surrender your vessel and prepare to be boarded. Aboard the Liberty, Amy Rodriguez suddenly straightened at her station. Captain, I'm getting something. It's definitely artificial. Definitely intelligent. The computer is starting to decode parts of it. Put it on the main screen, Jake ordered. The crew of the Liberty watched in fascination as the alien message appeared on their displays. First came mathematical sequences that any intelligent species would recognize. Then came pictures showing star maps with thousands of worlds marked as belonging to something called the Zephyrian Empire. Finally came images that were clearly meant as demands. Pictures of ships surrendering, crews being taken aboard alien vessels, and what looked like interrogation or examination procedures. The message was clear even without perfect translation: surrender or face the consequences. Jake looked around at his crew. These 30 people represented humanity's first contact with galactic civilization. How they responded would echo through history. Amy, can you send a reply? I think so, sir. The computer has figured out their basic communication protocols. Good. Send this message. We are peaceful explorers from the planet Earth. We seek friendly contact and cultural exchange. We have no hostile intentions. Amy worked to translate Jake's words into the alien communication system. It took several minutes to encode the message properly, but finally she had something that should be understandable. The reply traveled across space to the Zephyrian fleet, where it caused immediate confusion among Admiral Vorketh's staff. Sir, they claim to be peaceful explorers, the communications officer reported. They say they seek friendly contact and have no hostile intentions. Admiral Vorketh's expression darkened. In his experience, species that possessed advanced military technology and claimed to be peaceful were usually the most dangerous of all. They were either lying about their intentions or naive about the realities of galactic politics. Respond with this message, the Admiral ordered. You will surrender your vessel immediately and submit to Imperial authority. Your advanced propulsion technology must be examined and regulated according to galactic law. Resistance will be met with overwhelming force. The reply reached the Liberty minutes later. Amy's face went pale as she translated the alien response. Captain, they're demanding that we surrender our ship. They want to examine our engines and they're threatening to attack us if we refuse. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. Humanity's first contact with aliens, and they were being treated like criminals. The human race had dreamed of this moment for generations, imagining peaceful meetings and cultural exchange. Instead, they were facing demands for surrender from what appeared to be a galactic empire. Send this reply, Jake said firmly. We respectfully decline your demands. We have committed no crimes against any galactic law. We request peaceful dialogue between our peoples. When Admiral Vorketh received this second refusal, his patience finally ran out. In his long military career, he had never encountered a species that refused Imperial demands twice. The fact that this refusal came from beings in a primitive ship with impossible technology made it even more insulting. "All ships, power weapons, and prepare for boarding operations," he commanded. "If they will not surrender, we will take their ship by force." Throughout the Zephyrian fleet, massive weapon systems came online. Energy cannons that could vaporize mountains began charging. Tractor beam projectors prepared to seize the human vessel. Boarding craft loaded with Imperial Marines stood ready to launch. Aboard the Liberty, Greg Thompson's instruments detected the sudden spike in energy readings from the alien ships. "Captain, they're powering weapon systems. Multiple ships are targeting us." Jake realized that humanity's first contact was about to become humanity's first interstellar war. The situation was spiraling out of control, and he had to make a choice that would affect the entire human race. "Lisa, how fast can we move if we need to?" Chief Engineer Lisa Carter checked her readings. "The quantum slip drive is ready for emergency acceleration, Captain. We can be moving at maximum speed in less than 30 seconds. Amy, send one more message. Tell them that we do not wish to fight, but we will defend ourselves if attacked. Make it clear that we're leaving this area and we advise them not to follow." As Amy transmitted the message, Jake made his decision. "All hands, prepare for emergency acceleration. Pete, plot a course back toward Earth. We're going home." The Liberty's engines began to hum with power as the quantum slip drive prepared to fold space around the small human vessel. In seconds, they would be moving faster than the alien ships could follow. But Admiral Vorketh was not prepared to let them escape. As soon as his sensors detected the buildup of energy in the human ship's engines, he gave the order that would change galactic history forever. "All ships, open fire."